Hello, hello. Walter? Oh, there we go. We will call the Riviera Beach Community Redevelopment Agency to order. Today is April 14th. And Madam Clerk, could I get a roll call?
Commissioner Botel? Here. Commissioner Lawson?
Here.
Commissioner McCoy? Here. Vice Chair Miller Anderson?
Present.
Chair Lanier?
Here.
Jonathan Evans?
Present.
Michael Haygood?
Here.
And Tamara Sagan.
We will have a moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by Commissioner Kashamba Miller Anderson.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As you have reviewed the agenda, but let me start with the statement for the meeting. Any person who would like to speak on an agenda item, please complete a blue public comment card located at the front desk and give it to the staff prior to the item being taken up by the CRA Commission for discussion. Members of the public will be given a total of 3 minutes to speak on all items listed on the consent agenda and 3 minutes to speak on each regular agenda item. The time limit for public comment may be reduced by a vote of the CRA Board of Commissioners based on the voluminous nature of public comment cards. In no event will anyone be allowed to submit a comment card to speak on an agenda item after the resolution is read or the item considered. As you review the agenda, are there any additions, deletions, or substitutions?
Madam Chair, if I may, staff would like to remove items 11 and 12 and schedule those items to come back to the board at a meeting in the future, probably your first meeting in May.
Okay. Are there any other additions, deletions, or substitutions? Hearing none, can I get a motion to approve the agenda with the items 11 and 12 deleted?
So moved. So moved. Second.
Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Botel?
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson?
Yes.
Commissioner McCoy?
Yes.
Vice Chair Miller Anderson?
Yes.
Chair Lanier?
Yes.
That motion carries.
Adoption of the agenda, we have that disclosure. Any, based on the agenda that is before you, are there any staff members who would like to disclose any issues in regards to the items that are listed?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I see that the Marina agenda item discussion number 9.
Yes.
I'd like to disclose that I have a business relationship with Mr. Ezra Sappho. We both serve on a foundation board together.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I did have a conversation with one of the individuals from Tesro.
Okay, thank you. Any others? None being heard. The consent agenda is next on the agenda. All matters listed under this item are considered to be routine and action will be taken by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a councilperson, councilor, or commissioner so request, in the event that, in which event the item will be removed from the general order of business and is considered in its normal sequence of the agenda. Listed are 5 items for the consent agenda. Are there any items you would like to pull? And I would like to pull number 1. I'd like to get a discussion, not a discussion, but some understanding and some details about the invoices that have been submitted. Is there anything else?
No.
Move consent.
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Botel?
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson?
Yes.
Commissioner McCoy?
Yes.
Vice Chair Miller Anderson?
Yes.
Chair Lanier.
Yes,
That motion carries with number 1 pulled off the consent agenda.
thank you. Mr. Evans?
Madam Chair, the item that's before you this evening is the approval of the monthly invoices associated with legal services provided by Mr. Michael Haygood. CRA attorney, Mr. Michael Haygood, can answer any questions that the board may have as it relates to the invoices.
I also wanted to ask about this item. Where are we on the switch over for the IT piece?
Excuse me, Madam Chair, I didn't hear what you said.
Where are we on the switch? I see constant computing is a part of the invoices. We are supposed to have the city to provide IT services to the CRA, and I was wondering when that would happen.
Madam Chair, that particular item is contemplated to be discussed in item number 7 to talk about the relocation of CRA offices to City Hall. Also, there has been action that has been taken on the CRA side, and subsequent actions need to happen on the city side to effectuate the change. It's just that we have postponed it because we need to ensure that the board, or we'll get the board's perspective on the potential relocation of the offices. And once the board provides us clear direction on that matter, then the transition can commence, and that relationship would be severed contractually.
Okay. Give me a little background on the item in terms of the Treasure Coast. I know that we had a contract with them for planning. Just a little background on that, because this is the big invoice.
Madam Chair, Scott Evans, the planning director, will address those questions.
Thank you.
The Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council is currently working on CRA plan updates, and so those invoices are related to the work that they've done thus far in developing our new CRA plan.
And so how's that going? How far are they in terms of presenting something to us?
Well, this evening we will propose to amend their agreement so that they can not only work on the CRA plan, but also create changes to the city's land development code in our downtown districts. And they've begun work on the CRA plan. They also brought before you on February 24th the signage program. And they've also completed an analysis of improvements to improve water quality, and all of those will get incorporated into the new CRA plan update. And they've also begun work, preliminary work on the CRA plan update, going through the existing plan, identifying the items that need to be updated, as well as studying our area.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
You recognize, sir?
thank you. Ms. Evans, how long have we had a working business relationship with Treasure Coast?
Treasure Coast wrote the original CRA plan that was adopted in 2011, and they began the original work that ended up in that CRA plan update in 2007 with a community charrette. So they've been working on and off with the city since 2007.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Evans.
Mr. McCoy, you recognize? I'm sorry, Commissioner McCoy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, on a more specific and granular basis, Mr. Scott Evans, looking at the task, I'm not sure if I understand what is the execution of the interlocal agreement. What does that mean?
Well, the payments to Treasure Coast were laid out in the original interlocal agreement. And one of the payments was that once they started work on various elements of the CRA plan, that we would make payment to them as soon as they began the work.
Follow up.
Yes.
So, I guess when you say execution of an interlocal agreement, can you be more specific as to what exactly is being done? Because, I mean, if they're going to work on the CRA plan, or even, I believe you said that there's going to be an update on the land development regulations, can we see that in the actual invoice? Because with just saying execution on the interlocal agreement, does it say exactly what you're spending $3,000 for?
Yeah.
Or,
In that the reference should be that they, to work on the CRA plan update.
And my question is, can we be more specific? Because, you know, I'm just a little concerned that the $15,450 on the draft of the CRA signage improvement grant program, we already had the plan in existence already. I know that they had done some work and had done some renderings over at the shopping plaza on Blue Heron, but exactly, I mean, can you necessitate that that's $15,000 worth of work on the grant program when I'm already seeing that we've issued signage grant programs at least for the past 2 years, probably even longer. Actually, going back all the way to 2018, we were doing it. So exactly what does $15,000 represent? And my question is, can we be more specific when we see these agenda items? Like how do they bill us? You know, do they just send this invoice in? We don't have any backup to support what the number of hours or what specifically the task that they were working on?
Yeah, each of the tasks is laid out in the interlocal agreement with a cost associated with it. And as they move through the various percentage of work, so the payment for the signage program is related to completion of that portion of that task, which is in the interlocal, and we can add those details to future invoices so that it's provided.
No, I think that explains it. Good enough. I just was, I thought when you say execution of an interlocal agreement, I was hoping I was reading this wrong and not that they just signed the agreement and that costed us $3,000. So, okay, if it's in the interlocal agreement, I guess that helps to know what those amounts represent.
Are there any other questions in regards to this item? Hearing none, we will move on to unfinished business, which there is none. Presentations. I'm sorry? Oh,
Move item number
I
one,
guess
Madam
we would
Chair.
have to, wouldn't we? Let's, Madam Clerk, let's have a vote for, can I get a motion for this item?
Second.
All right, very good. Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Botel?
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson?
Yes.
Commissioner McCoy?
Yes.
Vice Chair Miller Anderson?
Yes.
Chair Lanier?
Yes.
That motion carries.
Okay, very good. Unfinished business presentations. We are at discussions number 6. Madam Clerk.
11th Street Townhouse Project, the acceptance of public comment cards is now closed, and there's no public comment cards for this item.
The acceptance of public comment cards is closed.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the board. This item is to provide an update with regards to the 11th Street Townhouse project. We have our Neighborhood Services Director, Ms. Anita Jenkins, that will present this item.
Good evening, Chairperson Lanier, Commissioners, Mr. Evans. We're here to give you an status update on our 11th Street Townhouse project, and to be able to show you where we are at this point and let you know what is to come. Next slide. Okay. As you recall, at our last meeting, you approved the funding for the special initiatives budget, which is tied to this project of $925,000. There are the properties that are included in this 11th Street Townhouse project on 11th Street. You see the parcels in their state. I'd just like to say that the bottom picture has a building on the site. That building has been demolished. There are some of the elements that we expect will be included in the townhouse development, and the initial renderings and the initial site plan. And you see another iteration of it there with the 12 townhomes laid out. Here are some elevations giving you a different view. And here is a very beautiful rendering of what we expect they will look like. And at this point, if you don't have any questions, I'd like to introduce Mr. Rick Gonzalez, who will walk you through the current status of the project.
Madam Chair,
Yes, you recommend.
just not a question. Could someone remove that, the stripe that's going across right here in front of the screen? come in front of the table, the pole. Can you just take the bottom one down for me?
This
The- No, down. I don't know what.
Howard. Belt. Over here?
Belt.
What do you call it?
On the post? Take off the...
The bottom
off the
one,
bottom.
just the bottom one.
Somebody gonna have to show him, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, we can't see.
It helps us see better, because I can't see up there anyway.
For those of you sitting back there at home, there's a TV right here so that we can see everything that's happening. So that's what she's talking about.
Thank you. Sorry for the confusion.
Go ahead.
I was just asking if there are any questions at this point, and if I may, I'd like to introduce Mr. Rick Gonzalez, the principal with REG Architects, who will walk you through the architectural status. And let me just add for a minute that we've had some very invigorating conversations with our Development Services Department, and we're quite excited about the project, and we hope that you will be too. So if there are any questions, if not, I'll bring up Mr. Gonzalez.
Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair and Commissioners and city staff and citizens of Rivera Beach. Honored to be here again this evening. Very excited about working in the best waterfront city in Florida. So we've got two projects that are just 2 blocks away. So we're really excited about them. On the 11th Street project, we are in the site planning phase working with your staff. We've been dealing with new staff. They've been wonderful to work with. They've been very helpful, Mary and the other gentlemen at P&Z. And on the 13th Street, I'm going to show you some conceptual renderings. We finished that assignment, which is just the conceptual work. The next step on that project would be to go ahead and move forward with a planning and zoning package like we're doing right now for 11th Street. So 11th Street is in the planning and zoning phase, and 13th Street, the concepts are done, waiting for the green light to move forward. So I'm going to go ahead and show you some more images. Okay. Yes. Yes, sir. Okay, yes, thank you. So the first project, which is the 11th Street Townhouse project, 2 buildings. Each building is anchored by 2 3-story market rate units and 4 2-story affordable workforce units. This is a rendering. We pursued the Caribbean design, very colorful, very flavorful, with a historic context, and very well situated next to the waterfront district here in downtown Riviera Beach. These are the elevations. I need to show them to you before. The bottom is the view from the street, from 11th Street, the 2 structures with a breezeway in the middle. And the back is the view from the garages from the alley side on the upper elevation there. Site plan hasn't changed. We've been tweaking the site plan. We have 2 options, one with the stoop taking advantage of the rather large right-of-way of 11th Street, so the units are up on the street in a good urban design manner, which allows for a service drive or an alley in the back with both on-street parking along the front and along the alley to supplement the garage parking in the units. The typical building, they're symmetrical, so building the left one or the one on the west on the top, and the one on the bottom is the other building on the right side. That's the first level of the buildings. And the upper level roof for the 2 3-story buildings have bedrooms on that 3rd level, and then the roof plan on the bottom, total roof plan of the structure. Starting with the larger unit, the 3-story unit, 1,700 square feet under air, 2,200 under roof when you include the garage, 2-car garage, a guest room, or even a little workspace, live work. Now that people in the COVID period are spending more time at home, that would make for a great little home office, for example.
The main living floor would be on the second floor. The kitchen towards the rear, and then living and dining towards the front. And then the upper floor would be the additional 2 more bedrooms for a total of 3 bedrooms. The 2-bedroom and 2-story, the 3-bedroom, 2-story unit is a 1-car garage with a smaller kitchen, dining, living area on the first floor, and then on the second floor, master bedroom on the front, and 2 guest bedrooms in the back. This one is 1,365 square feet under air, and a total of 1,642 under roof. Now this is a new rendering. This is now, if you're south on Avenue E, walking up to the development, it shows you the first buildings that you see there is this project, 11th Street, and then the buildings beyond are the conceptual designs for the next project, the 13th Street project. We thought it would be nice to show you a context rendering of a street edge, creating an urban design for the site that would continue in the phase 2 of the future project. This is a bird's eye view of the future project, Avenue 13th. So the view here is from 13th at the curve, Avenue E along the frontage there that you see, and then 11th on the rear. So this is the front building. It too is in Caribbean historic design inspiration, 3-story building, and we also have a 4-story option in the middle to get some more units if you decide to go more units. This project would be more of a mixed use because it has commercial visibility, so we would hope that you can get little cafes or shops or offices on the first floor, and then have the apartments, 17 on the second, 17 on the third, and then the option of 6 more on the fourth in the middle of the building. So it would be a step-down effect. That would allow you a total of 40 apartments in this future potential 13th Street project. In this rendering here, we're showing you the impact of the 4-story is rather small. You can see it in the bottom under option B. At the middle of the block is where the 2 4-story sections are. Or you could stay with the 3-story option, and you'd end up with 34 units. That would be option A, as rendered in the top there. In terms of site location, I don't have a pointer here, but you can see we're in the blue building right on the upper right-hand corner on the aerial there, and you can see the 2 sites are really, they're just 2 blocks away from the waterfront. Great location for urban living. Those 3rd floors and 4th floors will have waterfront views from up there, which is a nice selling point. The 2 projects go hand in hand very nicely with 11th Street along the bottom and 13th going up to 13th Street. They are in your downtown zoning, so this is the type of projects that the CRA and the Planning and Zoning Board is looking for as Riviera Beach continues to redevelop. Some of the data, it's a little bit over an acre and a half. Again, commercial uses on the first floor, second and third floor, the 17 units each, and then the optional 4th floor for another 6 for a total of 40. And we have more than sufficient shared parking at 90 parking spaces. The next couple of drawings are just diagrammatic SketchUps of the potential uses. This is the parking with the commercial in the pink color. There's a space for breezeways and outdoor areas. A lot of the new buildings we're designing are incorporating a lot of covered outdoor space. It's a change of life, right? Everybody with the COVID, not everybody wants to be inside a restaurant. They want to be outside like your tiki out here, right? People want to be outside but close. So if the corner space is a restaurant, for example, you have outdoor spaces on all 3 sides of the space. The same thing with the breezeways to connect you on-street parking, breezeway, and then back-of-house parking and service. The upper floors, let me go back. I missed the 2nd floor. Okay, sorry about that. On the right side is the typical 17 units per floor on the 2nd and 3rd floor, which are the 3 modules that you see there. And then the optional in the middle of the building, 4th floor with the 6 optional units. And that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions that I can answer.
Thank you. Yes, you recognize.
I'm looking at Google Earth, and just out of curiosity, there are two buildings on that block that would be to the northwest of the 11th Street, and, well, north of the 11th Street and west of the 13th Street. What are they? What are they?
So Avenue E is where we're working on, I think, is that Avenue
Yeah,
F?
yeah.
Oh, that's that church, I think. No, is that it?
Oh, okay.
I think
Oh, it does look like that might be.
I think you're referring to the northwest section coming south on Wright Street. It's a church and some apartments
Okay,
there.
thanks. It's a beautiful they're both beautiful projects, thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes, you're recognized.
Thank you. Ms. Jenkins, the starting price point on the market rate and units for the townhouses, what are starting price points?
For the market rate, we're looking at trying to bring them in around $325, $335. Of course, we don't have construction drawings that we can get bids, but based on prevailing prices and costs at this time.
And the workforce units?
Workforce units, we're trying to keep them below 300,000, so we're projecting about 275,000.
And those are all 3 bedrooms?
Yes,
Workforce units?
three bedrooms, 2.5 baths, all of them.
275 for the workforce, market rate. Okay, association, will there be an HOA over there?
There will be an HOA.
How's the property management going to be handled?
Well, the developer will handle it. It's typical in this type of development for the first year or two. Then it will switch over to the homeowners to manage. And we're hoping that they'll contract with a professional property management service. And we're hoping to marry this with other programs in the city in terms of job development, economic development, where there is a local property management firm, with experience, et cetera, that can manage this for the HOA.
Thank you for that. I wasn't even going to dig that in because you kind of know the direction of the board with just local participation. So thank you for just bringing that up.
Yes, most definitely.
The association that the developer will be handling, what percentage of occupancy will it be switching over to the owners running the association?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Normal developers, they have a percentage when it gets to 40, 50, 60% occupancy that the homeowners take over the HOA.
Right. Because of the mixed income nature of this project, and we may have some first-time home buyers, we'd probably be and that's something that we're actually discussing with legal, we'd probably be looking at 100% with a time trigger before it switches over.
Okay, because what I've noticed is that first-time home buyers, they'll go into properties and projects, they'll purchase the homes with a low association, and then 2-3 years in, the association jumps by 100, 200%. And they're not prepared to manage that influx, especially as being a first-time home buyer. So I want to have those discussions before we get started so we can know what.
We definitely will, and just from our experience, the CDC's experience with another project that we have in pre-development, we have outside counsel who specializes in HOAs who will be advising us in terms of our legal part of the team, so most definitely.
I would definitely have that caveat to make sure we set a parameter on the increase from what the developer sets of the association to what we jump into when it takes over for homeowners, because that can be a sore point for buyers, as first-time home buyers, that increase substantially. The taxes are going to go up, and then also the association.
Most definitely.
So they may not be able to afford it when they first get into the property to when it jumps to.
Most definitely.
Management HOA. Anticipated completion of phase 1.
Well, let's talk about anticipated commencement of phase 1. We're in the pre-site plan portion. The CDC is in the construction loan, structuring and packaging portion of the project. So we're doing all of this simultaneously. So all things being equal, and with Mr. Evans' assistance with our development services, going through site plan approval, permit, et cetera, we're hoping that, and Mr. Gonzalez, that we may be able to break ground before the end of the year, and then approximately, about a year from now, and then after that, about
I'm sorry,
18.
what's about a year? Breaking ground?
Breaking ground, 18 months, the end of the year to a year from now, so 9 to 12 months. And then about 18 to 24 months after that, the project should be completed.
Okay. And timeline, how do we expedite that timeline?
Well, we're working as diligently as we can and working with a very large team. We expect that we'll bring our draft development agreement to you next month and anticipating your approval of that. And with the meetings that are happening on the city side, we will move as expeditiously as we can. I don't want to oversell and not be able to deliver, but we're doing everything that we can.
I really want those points, like with us 9 months to a year, I want to try to hit sooner marks than that, because the reason I'm asking all these questions is because I'm overly excited about this project. I want to give you and your staff, Mr. Evans, Scott, and Jonathan Evans, kudos, because this is the type of projects that we want to see, that the community's been craving. So I'm very excited about this. I'm very excited about what you've brought to the table, and also the partnership with the CDC. And then I absolutely love the retail wrap with the apartments on the phase 2 on 13th Street. That's just going to really give that area the beautification and the development that they've been craving since I was a kid. So
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Madam Chair,
Yes, you recognize.
I'd like to say I am probably more excited than anyone at this point, because we haven't had a whole lot going on in my district for a while, and I think this would be a perfect springboard to having some other things happen on E Avenue as well. I did have a question about the first-time homebuyers. Will there be a number of people selected or who have an opportunity to vie for these that are Riviera Beach residents or who have gone through our program?
We'll make every effort. The way we operate the Home Buyers Club, as I've said many times, is always first come, first serve,
Right.
first ready.
Right.
So we're actually doing a bus tour of potential sites around the city next week, and we'll be showing this site, trying to encourage people to get ready. And because we ascribe to HUD's affirmative marketing, we'll make sure that people have an equal opportunity for the units. But most definitely, we are trying to assist the first-time home buyers to participate and make sure that we're reaching Riviera Beach residents.
Okay. And I know I said that we haven't had anything in my district, but more so in the west side of Broadway and south of Blue Heron, in that Park Manor area. So
Yes.
that would be a great addition to having that area. I do agree with Mr. Lawson. However, we can move this a little quicker. I would certainly support if there's something the board needs to do in order for it to speed up a little bit. I certainly support that.
Thank you.
However we can do that, that would be very good for me. So,
We appreciate
and I'm sure the
that.
residents would like that as well.
Yes.
Thank you.
May I point out before I leave that in your packet, and this is for the benefit of the public, we had some preliminary terms that will be included in the development agreement in terms of the owners, the developers, the project manager, which will be the CDC. We've laid out various roles for the entity, the CRA, CDC, and the city, and details about the project structure and members of the development team. And it's a stellar team, starting with Mr. Gonzalez and his team. They're just very creative and very good. And we have our landscape architect and our engineering firm and surveyors already on board. So it's a very good and complete team, along with our legal counsel. And we're just making sure that we're going to deliver a quality, first-class, world-class project for this city. So thank you.
Are there any other questions? Yes, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Jenkins, who is the developer that you're going to bring a development agreement back?
The developer is an entity to be formed by the CDC, Riviera Beach Community Development Corporation.
Okay, so, and I was looking for the team that you spoke of. Where's that? I don't see that in.
It's on the second page of your memo.
presentation?
Of the memo?
Oh,
There is a memo in your backup.
So, so being that this arrangement between the CRA and the CDC, not to confuse with Center for Disease Control, but the Community Development Corporation, at what point do we, I guess the development agreement is gonna lay out the fees and that whole arrangement?
Yes.
And I guess I just wanna make sure that I understand ahead of it being brought to us in a more, I guess in a very detailed manner, because we're already undertaking development agreements potentially here soon with some of the other projects that we're doing, exactly what the parameters are of it, and exactly what our role is as the CRA compared to the CDC, because sometimes that presentation started with both logos on it, but quite honestly, some of this is CRA property. And I kind of want to understand exactly, because this seems like we're going to get very much into a complex transaction, and I want to make sure I understand what the CRA's responsibility is, what we can expect the CDC's responsibility to be in this development agreement, and how that is to work. And I don't even really know what to expect, but I'm really interested to see what that looks like. And I'm hoping that, if at all possible, once it's finalized through your team, that we can have an opportunity to, be able to bring some discussions about it.
That is our intent.
Okay, and then the property description, it says 130 West 11th Street. Is that just a corner lot? Oh, I see it now. Oh. So I guess even better now. So how would these be numerically signed addresses? Is it going to be something?
There, and Mr. Haggard helped me going through the process of, at some point, we'll do a unity of title, because there are 3 separate parcels or 4 separate parcels, working with the surveyors and the engineers. Then there'll be legal descriptions for, most likely, for each of the townhomes. And we'll do a replat.
We're going through a process now, trying to determine.
Recognize.
Sorry, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
We're going through the process now, reviewing the site plan to see if in fact it's going to be even though it's structured as a townhome, it's probably going to be more of a condo, because there are going to be some common areas which don't lend themselves to a townhouse. As you noted, the CRA owns, I think, 3 of the properties. 2 of them. And the proposal, without getting into too much detail, will be that we would transfer the title of the CRA lots to the new entity to be formed by the CDC. They'll have the logic being that the CDC will have access to more funding than the CRA. So all it will be detailed in the development agreement, which we hope to bring back to you next month.
Follow up.
Yes, go ahead.
So specifically, just to that point, Mr. Hager, the transfers of the lot, that's going to be a separate board action, correct?
Yes, sir. It would be, the way we've structured this is that even though we agree to transfer the property wouldn't be transferred until the CDC actually closes on its construction loan. So at the time they come forward and the construction loan is ready, we will then transfer the title. Well, that's the proposal, that the property be then transferred to the CDC.
And just generally speaking, and I don't want to seem pessimistic about it, but even after the close of financing, will there be a reverter in the event that there's not COs or anything like that?
Yeah, we will, we try to structure to make sure that we don't have to worry about going with a reverter. We are going to, and we've discussed this with Anita, there's going to be some type of a restricted covenant or something to make sure that the properties, we're trying to make sure that people aren't able, at least this is initially, aren't able to use the properties to,
For investment.
yes. So we're going to put some restriction on it. All that will be spelled out in the development agreement.
Okay, and because you're speaking and we're going to, do you really imagine that this is something that's going to be complete in totality, the development agreement at our next CRA meeting?
We're going to try our best, sir.
Okay.
We've started the drafts, so we've got some concepts down. So hopefully, yes.
Okay, and I'm just saying that because I'm interested and I like the fact that we do reverters, but I just want to know, in theory, like, what are we looking for? Are we looking for 2 years, 4 years on a must maintain as a primary resident?
We haven't gotten to
I'm sorry, what was the question?
So
how
the
long.
restrictions that's going to be placed, are we looking for a 2-year, primary residence occupancy, or exactly how long, or?
Longer. If you recall, when we presented the Special Initiatives Program, I think there was a proposed term of, hold on a minute, please. I'm sorry, just give me a minute. 25 years. And that's anticipated. Some of the units will require subsidy. So we're trying to match the subsidy to the restrictive period. But that's to be determined. You all might want to do something different. Because of the location and because we have to sort of balance, I guess, gentrification, making sure that residents can participate in the process, we have to sort of balance the time period. But we'll bring that back to you.
Okay, 25 years is a long time. I mean, perhaps I could agree on a single-family home, but on townhomes, I mean, anything can potentially happen or even move. And, unless you said cost was roughly about $350 of what you was estimating in construction costs. Target price of $275. Is that before or after subsidies?
That's before, for the less expensive units. And of course, people can sell these at any time. There's just, with the covenant, they would just have to pay, if they receive subsidy, pay some of the money back.
Okay. But then, does that then expire after the first sale of the primary or initial homeowner?
No.
So if someone comes back and sells to another private owner, they're going to have the same restrictions?
The restriction, I would suggest, would run with the land.
But if they don't, if the second purchaser or the second owner, occupant, doesn't receive any subsidies, what exactly would they be asked to pay back?
They've received the benefit of the money. If we're not, and Michael, Mr. Haygood, if you would help me out here, with the restriction wouldn't be with the buyer, it would be with the land.
Right.
So someone would buy it with that knowledge.
So, I think the theory is, and the philosophy behind it is that the CRA is and the CDC are subsidizing these units and trying to avoid the second property owner, at least requiring the second property owner to also acknowledge that, this property has been subsidized. You have put the CRA has put a significant amount of money in this, and trying to prevent, this is eventually going to be the agency's decision, trying to prevent somebody actually coming in, and the term I cannot think of, is actually coming in and making a big profit off of it, a windfall off of money that the CRA has subsidized for the project. But, again, this is going to be something ultimately the board's going to have to decide.
Thank you, but I guess, let me try it this way. So once the subsidy has been recouped by the first buyer, what exactly, for any subsequent buyers, can we then recoup from someone if the recoup has already been captured or clawed back from the first seller?
Well, I don't necessarily think that you are going to recoup the totality of the subsidy. For instance, I think we already have bought those units, or at least they would donate some of those units to the CRA, and then there's going to be a request for substantial subsidy from the CRA for construction. I think the program is budgeted at, I think, $900-some thousand. So,
Plus other costs. I think you're thinking of a land trust model in terms of the sharing of equity, et cetera. If the first buyer, and I'll give a quick example and not to get too deep into the weeds. If a unit sells for $300,000, somebody receives $75,000 in subsidy, so they have a mortgage for $225,000. They turn around in a year or so and sell the unit. They'll still owe pretty close to the full amount of the mortgage because they wouldn't have paid down too much in principal. There's a restrictive covenant, and there'll be a second mortgage, maybe, but there will be a restrictive covenant on the land, let's say worth the $75,000. So in order for them to sell it, the person would have to pay whatever the value is a year from now. The first buyer would have to pay us back if we decide to release the restrictive covenant, the $75,000, or we pass the benefit on to the second buyer. So the second buyer would buy it with the almost $75,000 value of the restrictive covenant. So it stays with the land, so our investment is protected for as long as you want it to be there. And that's so somebody doesn't walk away with a windfall and what's called unjustly enriched on this project.
Thank you. That explains it. Thank you.
All right, very good. Are there any other questions? I have one question for you. I was going to ask about the restrictive covenant and that length of time of 25 years. That's a bit long for me, but we can have some
It's
discussion
something
about that.
Yes.
The other one was was something that I read earlier about the down payment assistance and subsidies being at staff approval or having to do with them making that decision. And I think that there needs to be a standardized way of providing subsidies and down payments so that it is across the board. There is no discretion in terms of who gets what. So we need to look at that as well.
And we will bring it back to you, but the way the subsidy goes is based on need and based on whatever the gap is. Programs no longer give, mostly, some do, give a flat amount in terms of subsidy. It's based on what the gap is. If you qualify for a $250,000 mortgage, but because you get the standard $75,000 in subsidy, that's $25,000 in investment potential that somebody's putting in their pocket. So what we, staff only, suggest is that we feel the need up to whatever our limits are. But we definitely will bring it back to you, and of course, it's a board decision.
Yeah, we're going to have to work out a lot of details in terms of how we move forward with this, but I do agree with moving forward as quickly as possible.
Yes, ma'am.
If there are any other questions, thank you.
Madam Chair, one last one, I'm sorry.
Yes.
In the information provided about, in general, the Special Initiatives Program, it indicates that the income requirement would be up to 150% of AMI. Is that requirement going to restrict your ability to sell the market rate units to people who are over 150% AMI?
No, I think these were the initial requirements, and I think
Okay.
Mr. McCoy made a point that he wanted some of the units to be available for market rate buyers.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, but the backup does say staff in terms of subsidy and down payment, so we need to look to make sure that that is not something that staff determines. It is something, as you said, that's based on need. Are there any other questions? thank you so much for your
Thank you
presentation.
for your
Thank you.
support and your questions.
Yes.
Thank you.
Let us move on to
Thank you.
item number 7.
Relocation of CRA offices to City Hall. The acceptance of public comment cards is now closed, and we have no public comment cards for this item.
Madam Chair and members of the board, the item before you this evening is consideration with regards to the relocation of CRA offices to City Hall. Recently, the city has completed the renovations to the administrative wing at the City Hall campus to be able to accommodate the potential move of CRA administrative offices. Staff has also moved forward with doing an indoor air quality assessment on those particular office spaces that would be occupied, and there was no issues that came back as a result of that study, and that was predicated on some of the concerns that the board articulated in the original conversation. If the CRA board is amenable to moving forward with the CRA occupying the office suite at City Hall, there could be a potential savings of anywhere from $125,000 to $98,000 per year. Based on a couple of options here, if the CRA is to move in without any fees that would be paid to the city, the savings would be roughly that $125,000 per year. There's also some additional savings that would be experienced by the CRA as it relates to hardware costs associated with information technology. There will be immediate savings of about $25,000 as the city has already invested in the appropriate infrastructure to accommodate the move. In addition to, there would be an annual savings of roughly about $9,000 for the internet circuit that the city has over at the City Hall campus, and the CRA would not have to continue to pay for those services that it's paying at its existing facility. The square footage of the facility that we're looking to relocate into is approximately 1,400 square feet. The facility space that is currently occupied by CRA offices is 6,300 square feet. Mr. Scott Evans is here to explain some of the modifications that have occurred as it relates to the lease agreement, and Mr. Chris Prasad, our Information Technology Director, is here to talk about any nuances associated with the potential move to information services. And it is important to note that there was an agreement to move forward that was approved by the CRA board to memorialize the interlocal agreement that allowed for information technology to take over the internet or the IT responsibilities and take those duties from the private provider. Mr. Evans?
Yes. There's been several board actions previously that would allow this decision this evening. The second floor of the City Hall space has been completed sufficiently to accommodate the CRA staff that are in our administrative offices. Additionally, this past summer, when we amended our lease agreement, the board modified it to provide the option to give 60 days notice to our current landlord in case the board continued to proceed as this an option. And if we provided them the notice following this evening's meeting with your direction, then that would allow us to provide them that notice. So during the month of May, we would prepare for the move, and then during the month of June, we could make that move into the City Hall offices. Additionally, the CRA board approved the interlocal agreement that would allow the city to begin taking over information technology services. And if that happens before the move, of course, we will save that $25,000 in additional hardware. Rather, if it happens when we move into the City Hall site. And if we stay at our current location, then we would have to spend that additional $25,000 up front, in addition to the approximately $9,000 per year we pay for phone and internet service.
Madam Chair, staff is prepared to answer any questions the board may have.
Madam Chair?
Yes, you recognize.
I think one of the concerns someone brought up was regarding the now being in the pandemic. Social distancing would be allowed for by moving into that new area for the amount of people that are coming over?
The installation of some of the systems furniture or the cubicles were intended to be able to allow for the guards to be, well, not guards, but the furniture to have a 6-foot height, and it would be a substantially smaller space, obviously, than is previously occupied, but we did plan the space as best as we possibly can, considering the 1,400 square feet. There is some situations whereby persons would look to either occupy the existing space, and if there's a concern, there is additional flex space that's available in the existing council chambers of a bank of cubicles that we have installed that was being utilized by development services. But we did construct the space to be able to mitigate against, the concern that folks had, but it is a significantly smaller space than currently being occupied.
Okay, and I know that one of the things that I did bring up was about the lease, and so I remember having, the meetings where we discussed going back and getting the lease amended. We talked about having the IT switched over, and, I know later on there were some concerns about possibly not moving the CRA over to that location. My position on it has not changed. I am still in support of making that transition. I do just want to make sure that we do have a plan so that people are not feeling that they're going in a really congested space. If there's a plan to be able to provide that distance, then I certainly continue to support this idea, because we are able to save on quite a bit of funds. And, I do think it's time for us to try to, cut back on that spending that we're doing in the CRA. So unless we have a concern in regards to, people sitting on top of each other in that area, I have not changed my position on moving forward with the way that we spoke of several months back. Thank you.
Yes. Go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Scott Evans, so, or perhaps I'm not sure which Mr. Evans, but so we're currently at 6,300 square feet. Did I hear that correctly at the CRA offices?
That is correct.
And we're going down to 1,400?
Yes, sir. That is correct. That's what's being proposed.
Okay, and I'm even looking at the actual cost for IT services. They aren't. In fact, it's significantly, it seems like it's just went up exponentially. When I go down this list of the number of things that have to be kind of brought up to, I guess, integrate with the current operations of the city's IT. And, I thought this was going to be, at least when this first came up, the point of saving money, but this, in fact, costs significantly more, and you're probably reducing the space by at least 70%. So I'm still not sure exactly how we would move the CRA offices completely out of the CRA altogether. So, that I don't support, and I don't think that this is any better to move into this location.
Thank you for your comments. Is there a presentation from you, Mr. Broussard?
Madam Chair, if there was any questions with regards to the IT component, I asked for Ms. Prasad to be able to address those questions.
Okay, thank you. I have the same mindset. Initially, we have to move on this project. I was in favor of moving the CRA to City Hall. We are in City Hall, meaning legislative aides and council commissioners are in City Hall as well. Finance is in City Hall. So there will be welcomed. If there are not any other questions in regards to this item, we can move forward. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm absolutely not in support of moving these facilities for the exact reason that my colleague stated. I don't see the actual savings that we're going to have, because with IT, the upgrades and the increase of moving and relocating CRA over to the city, we do have equipment that we have to update, but that equipment can be updated over a certain period of time versus immediately. And with switching and transferring over to the city system, it has to be done immediately. So that's going to eliminate and offset that cost. And as I know, and from my understanding, this is a temporary move because we're looking to establish and set up city facilities. hopefully with a consideration of moving City Hall down to our CRA district, then we can have that partnership, and having City Hall and the CRA working in conjunction and having their own wing. But trying to fit a boulder into a teacup doesn't make sense to me. We're going to have 12 to 13, I believe, employees going into a small apartment size unit. And that's going to be for a period that we haven't set or established. We have no idea when we're going to continue to build our set facilities for them to relocate or move to. So we have to make aggressive strides in identifying where these city facilities will be. If we had an outline to say that we would be starting our city facilities in our downtown district and having our City Hall move to 20th Street, this building would be done within the next 24 months, I'd be supportive of this because we can have an end time for our employees. But as of right now, we have 12 employees that's going to be going from the space they're in now to a space of a small 2-bedroom apartment, and they're going to have to work with each other in conjunction. In addition to that, I would also want us to look at, if this is the direction the board goes, giving our employees the option to work from home, because that space is just not conducive to a good working environment. And I foresee that we really need, with some of these projects that's coming down the pipeline through our CRA, to make sure that our staff is accommodated to. So that's one of my concerns with the first part of the relocation. The IT concern, I do actually want to hear from Mr. Broussard, and just understanding what is going to be the difference in price point for the IT move, and if the equipment that's currently in the CRA, if we decided not to move it, would still be feasible to use over the next 24 to 48 months.
Sure. So,
Hold on a second.
sorry.
Are there any other questions about this project?
I'd like to also hear about the IT costs. And what's the typical size of the cubicles that are going to be given to the CRA staff?
Go ahead with the IT part of it.
Okay.
Yes.
So we've done an assessment of the CRA, all of the CRA, and there is some equipment that is outdated. There are some that do pose security risks, so that hardware, regardless, has to be changed. So that's the first piece. The second part of this, we already have the firewall infrastructure, we have the network infrastructure, we have all those components in place, so that's where that savings would come. The CRA would still have to incur that cost going forward for their current location or wherever they're at if they're not at a location with the city.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
So you're saying that there's a savings in terms of the IT costs by moving to the City Hall site?
Correct. Their internet, all the firewalls, the wireless, there are the security firewalls, the wireless, network data switches, and also the monthly fee for the internet services.
That's not true.
And you're saying that that's where we're getting that. What's the dollar value of that saving?
$25,400 in the hardware,
Okay.
and then it's a shared expense for the savings on the
Okay.
on the internet services.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead. You're recognized.
Thank you.
Mr. Evans.
Who?
That was me, Madam
That
Chair.
was me.
That was,
Oh, that was you.
Well, it was me and
both of
lots of it,
It was me and-
both of us.
All right, oh, Mr. Evans, you were not saying?
I'll wait till after the
All
council.
right, go ahead. Ms.
You just-
Miller Anderson, please.
So is it 12 employees we're talking about in the CRA that would be moving? How many are we talking?
I believe it's
I think
nine
Nine.
spaces, and the spaces combined into,
Wait a minute, 9 people?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, 9 people for 6,000 square feet? Is that what we're
yes.
saying?
Well, in the space comparison, we're actually going to occupy more space than the 1,400 square feet. So right now in our current offices, we have bathrooms, we have your entrance hallways, you have your public reception area, we have conference rooms. So we will utilize those that exist at the City Hall and share them with the other city departments. So the CRA will have its own area that's, that you go through the door to go to. But then we will also utilize the conference rooms and the bathrooms and the break areas of the existing City Hall. So all of those take up, a substantial portion of the space where we currently rent.
Right, and so when we're saying we're downsizing from 6,000 square feet to 12 or 1,400 square feet, we're not talking about all of the 9 employees using all of that. If you were to look at their offices, and combined it, I'm sure that would not be that far off from what we're talking about right now. We're talking only about the cubicle space. They would be in cubicles, correct?
There would, in the space that has been designed for the CRA, there is 4 offices, I believe, and then there is the 5 cubicles. So there is 4 offices that have been placed in that particular suite, and then there's the remaining balance is 5 cubicles that, for all intent and purpose, I think the cubicles may be 4 by 3 with a 6-foot high, basically wall or partition between one another.
Well, I can certainly understand, everyone feeling that you're moving from a penthouse to maybe an apartment. But we have to look at the bigger picture. Coming from the school, and when we're in a classroom, we have 30, 40 kids in one little 700 square foot space. So although I'm talking about kids, but I'm talking about what will be able to help the agency. We know that we have a very large, expensive building that we're paying for, and we have been paying for quite a while. I feel that the CRA is not the city, so we don't do as much business as the city does constantly. And I think it is a time for us to look at how we can downsize on some of the things that we're doing. And my position is not changing on this. As Mr. Evans just mentioned, there are other common spaces that you would be using. We're simply talking about your workspace, where you will be doing your work at, would be in the smaller offices or the cubicles. That's where I am with that. Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes, go ahead.
the difference in size.
Sorry, I'm sorry, Commissioner Botel, it was Mr. Lawson's opportunity. Commissioner Lawson, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The marina, Mr. Broussard, what are we doing about the IT services at the marina?
So the marina is currently under the CRA's jurisdiction right now, and if we do that, we would like to put them onto the city's internet system, and I think there's some security camera things that they would like to ride through the city's internet as well for the police side of the house as well. I know they have some on the poles right out here as well, and those are some of the connections that need to be upgraded. We've been working with I guess the police department on that, but we're kind of hoping for that connection so that way we can use it here and kind of save some money with that as well.
So that's currently not in any of the proposals that we have with moving the CRA offices?
That is correct. There are some wireless access points that are maintained here that we would be swapping out for later technology.
Okay. Mr. Scott Evans, Constant Computing's invoices, are those covering the CRA offices and the marina?
Yes.
Okay. So we're going to have to increase our costs to bring the marina on when we do, because you're saying that there's going to be an actual...
Point of order, sir. We are talking about CRA offices moving to City Hall. The marina is a separate issue here. I'm saying that because the discussion on the table is just the offices and the people moving to City Hall.
Correct. So if we do move them and move the IT services, Madam Chair, that means that we're also going to be looking at the services that are handled.
For this purpose of this discussion, we're going to stick with the CRA in their offices and their employees going to City Hall.
Which the cost of
Thank
the
you.
IT, Madam Chair.
Proceed.
I'm going to continue. And
Go
as
ahead,
the cost
proceed.
of the IT services are also going to be incorporated into this discussion, so we have to look totality at all the costs that's going to be encompassed with it. And we haven't had that discussion of the marina.
What does the marina have to do with the CRA offices?
It's a cost that we're paying, Madam Chair. It's a cost that's going to
But it has nothing to do with the CRA offices and the CRA.
When we move the
the
CRA
city move.
offices, the discussion and why Mr. Broussard is here is because we're talking about the IT services, Madam Chair.
We're
That's
talking
why
about the
Mr. Johnston
IT
Evans brought-
services where the CRA offices are currently located on Broadway. We're moving individuals from Broadway to City Hall. Those are the IT services that we're currently, Mr. Broussard just said that is not configured into what his discussion is.
Mr. Broussard, some of the hardware needs that need to be changed. You mentioned that there's going to be some costs when we move over to the City Hall service.
Correct.
Versus where if we kept CRA building where it is currently. What are some of the costs that we would incur if we kept the IT services where they are?
Sure. So currently, the CRA has four outdated servers that are 4 to 7 years old. Usually 5 years is usually a standard that we try to stick to in technology. Additionally, they have a storage array that's a little dated that needs to be upgraded within a year. So that's another thing as well. Currently, there's 35 desktops and laptops for the CRA staff, and several of them are Windows 7, which is no longer supported by Microsoft anymore, and there's a lot of security flaws with that. That cost comes out to about $20,000 in just computer hardware. Security firewalls, they do have security firewalls. We would bring them into the city standards. That's about $17,000 per firewall is what the cost is in the industry as well. But if they come under the city, they would not have to incur that cost as well. Data switches are about $7,000 each is what we currently pay for the city. They currently have data switches that are probably 3 years old, so they have another 2 years of life on them, so you're getting towards the end of life of there as well.
Okay, so those immediate upgrades, do you have a total cost on what those immediate upgrades are?
Immediate upgrades would be definitely the computers, which is at least $20,000 right up front. Storage array, with the city it's about $50,000 for storage array. And there's 4 servers, approximately $9,000 each, that need to be upgraded as well.
Okay. Comparison over to just complete services being switched over to the IT department. So if we do move the city over to City Hall, what would be the total cost of the change with equipment? Is it like I believe the number was like 326?
270.
Okay.
Let me give you the exact number.
So if we left it where we were, our total cost would be close to about 120 versus the 270.
Yeah, there is other additional costs because you do also have phone services that are there as well. But you're paying that cost regardless of where you're at. It's just kind of how that cost works.
Okay. So
it's $232,900 for the transition.
200. I'm sorry. How much?
$232,900.
232,000. That's to relocate them to City Hall.
Correct, and that's not to exceed amounts, because of course if there's opportunities for savings, we'll definitely take those into account as well.
Absolutely. And then if we just kept facilities where they were and still made the upgrades to the infrastructure, the numbers that I calculated was about, you said 4 servers at $20,000 apiece?
Servers are about $9,000 each.
Oh, 9,000 each, and there were 4 of them?
Correct.
And then what was the 20,000?
20,000 would be just standard computer upgrades.
Okay, and there's multiple computer upgrades?
There are.
Okay.
There are. There's a total of 35 right now, and the total cost is $20,000 to get them off of Windows 7 to make sure the hardware is supported with Windows 10, which is the current Microsoft-supported operating system.
Gotcha. Okay, so we're looking at over $100,000 then versus the $232,000.
Correct. Plus, Constant Computing's hourly rate, which kind of folds in with us as well. So there's really that cost isn't there as well.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? I'm sorry.
Yes, I was curious about the comparison between the size of the current office space at the existing site versus the size of the new office and cubicle space at the City Hall site.
Who's that for? You're directing that question to?
Anybody who can answer.
Okay.
Not fussy.
Mr. Scott Evans.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The new space has a combination of offices. They're all of different size because we had to fit them into the existing space at City Hall. The cubicles are at least 6 feet wide with large dividers that have been installed.
Okay. But there are private offices.
There are 4 private offices. Yeah.
Okay.
And then we will also need additional storage space within the city complex somewhere.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Yes, you're recognized, sir.
So, speaking of CRA offices, the ambassador center that contains the offices, was that never considered? And how much space is that?
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
The ambassador space is a space that we will still continue to maintain because we think that that's a strategic location and provides for additional meeting space that certainly we need in the community. So that the ambassador operations and the offices that are at the ambassador center will remain.
Right, but how much space do you know? Because there's at least 1 or 2 offices there, right?
think at least, I think probably close to 3.
And I guess I go back to the concern of space, because the very space where we're proposing in City Hall, if I believe you told me, was the space that was occupied by the city attorney's office,
That is correct.
which had 4 employees, and now we're going to essentially double that. So, on top of, well, I guess we're not doubling, we're going to 9. And I guess the IT would then be centralized, not in that space, but over in, I guess the IT would be centralized with wherever the other city's IT equipment is.
We
That's
have, if I may, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
So we do have our main data center is at City Hall, and that is in the downstairs of City Hall. It's kind of where our main hub is. We do operate out of the Public Works building as well, but our main hub is at City Hall, and primarily that's where we spend a lot of our time over there as well.
Okay, and, well, let me just say, I don't know how, but even if you move that over, what about the other components that the commissioner was speaking of, about those other offices? Didn't they get migrated over as well?
If I may, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
So one of the things is we try to get the city sites interconnected to the city. So there's a lot of remote administration done for these type of locations, if there's a remote location. And if we don't do remote, of course, we have people on the roads because we have many sites all over the city. So we would still just treat them as another site and, you know, address any concerns that come up for their technology needs as well.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Botel?
Give me a minute, come back to me.
All right, thank you.
Oh, yes, no, it just came to me. So this is a little bit tangential, but when will the city manager spaces be reconvened in City Hall?
Madam Chair, since the city manager's office is so gracious to allow for code compliance as well as the CRA to occupy the office suite, we have given up those particular suites. However, there is an office there that I will occupy to be able to assist with anything related to the CRA and the city side. But one of the things I think is also germane to the conversation is the intent behind the move is one, yes, this to save money, but 2, development services and the CRA, as you heard today, have so many projects and so many opportunities that they have touch points. And we believe that there can be a lot of synergy with planning and development services in the CRA, that a developer could come in and get one-stop shop services versus a situation where it is now where they're at different sites. So we think that there's a lot of synergy that can be created by the close contact and working with development services. But if there is concerns that employees have, certainly we will make sure that we make the appropriate accommodations and look at some tweaks, whether it's working at a different location or remote or what have you. All those things we would definitely err on the side of caution.
So just to follow up quickly, so it's not just the legal department space that's being used, it's also what had been part of the city manager space? I'm just trying to picture what the eventual setup will be.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
The conference room space that used to be part of the city manager and legal office suite has been cannibalized. The old city manager's office now is the conference space for development services as well as the CRA. So we've taken that conference space, and then there has been some modifications and tweaks to the actual layout to be able to accomplish the design that we do have. The offices are smaller than staff is accustomed to, but we did have multiple conversations. I did encourage staff to go take a look at the site, and Mr. Evans worked with me on the layout. And we believe that the site can accommodate what we're trying to effectively accomplish. But more so, I think the value is the synergy that can be created working in close proximity of development services.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Evans, what do you want from us for this particular item?
We would like direction from the board as to how you wish to proceed, because we need to come back with some subsequent actions. We need to bring the interlocal, we have the interlocal agreement for information services, and we need to then bring that before the city council for final approval. So we just need direction from the board. Does the board concur with the recommendation to move forward with relocating the offices? If so, then we can find out when the appropriate time is to provide notice to our existing landlord, and then commence the relocations, and then bring back the appropriate documentation to effectuate the move, and then to see if there is an agreement with the board that there's not going to be any cost associated with a lease payment that's provided from the CRA to the city. Because one of the options and one of the conversations that the board did have is that there was some discussions about some payments that were provided, and so we have that as an option as well.
So move.
Can I get a motion to relocate the CRA offices to City Hall?
Madam
So
Chair,
moved.
Madam Chair?
point of clarification, because he just introduced something that I've never heard before about a payment. So are you suggesting that there's gonna be a payment, Mr. Evans?
No, councilperson, that actually came up as the discussion with the board, that the board was saying, would there be some type of payment? And originally, we came with the proposal that required no payment because we saw it as a situation where we'd rather see the investment in projects and initiatives versus a lease payment to occupy the space. So it's staff's recommendation that we move forward with no lease payment, but it was brought up by the board at your meeting when we did discuss this matter. So we did want to put it on the table and see if it was the desire of the board to move in that direction.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
So you want us to give you that information tonight in regards to the payment? Because I think that was Commissioner McCoy, I believe, brought that up about the payment. Because initially we weren't talking about a payment. And so if McCoy recalls, I believe that was a concern or a question of his. And so with it being in the documents today, you want us to say, yes, we want to go that route, or no, or that's something we can do later on?
If it's the pleasure of the board, we would just ask for direction if the board wants us to move forward with the relocation and then look to deal with that other issue at another point. You can certainly do that, but we did want to make sure that that was enumerated as an option because it was brought up by the board in conversations.
Can I get a motion, please?
I make a motion that we move forward with the relocation of the CRA to the City Hall building.
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Botel?
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson?
No.
Commissioner McCoy?
No.
Vice Chair Miller Anderson?
Yes.
Chair Lanier?
Yes.
That motion carries with Commissioner Lawson and Commissioner McCoy dissenting.
We can move on to the next item, which is number 8, Madam Clerk.
RBCRA
Thank you
Board.
guys for your presentation. I'm sorry, Madam Clerk. Thank you for your presentation. Mr. Scott Evans, Mr. Broussard, IT. Thank you.
Madam Chair, it is 7:30, and we didn't know if you wanted to handle your citizen comments first.
Yes, we can. We can do that. We'll start with, we'll put off number 8 until after the public comments. Please be reminded that the CRA Board of Commissioners has adopted rules of decorum governing public comment during official meetings, which has been posted at the front desk. In an effort to preserve order, if any of the rules are not adhered to, the commission chair may have any disruptive speaker or attendee removed from the podium, from the meeting, and or the building if necessary. Please govern yourselves accordingly. Public comments shall begin at 7:30 unless there is no further business of the CRA Board of Commissioners, which in that event it shall begin sooner. In addition, if any item is being considered at 7:30, then comments from the public shall begin immediately after the item has been concluded. Any person who would like to speak during public comment, please fill out a public comment card located at the front desk and give it to the staff before the public comment section is announced. Madam Clerk?
The acceptance of public comment cards is now closed, and we have 2 public comment cards, Tammy Lou Litch and Erica Davis.
Very good.
Hi, good evening. I'm just here mainly representing the opinions of the citizens in Riviera. They're kind of afraid to approach you whenever it comes to recreation for the kids. I'll just start. Good evening, witnesses, advisors, and board. My name is Tammy Lulick. I'm not of a wealthy background, excuse me, but do realize this is a tourist state. So no matter how long I've lived here in Riviera, I personally still think that the advertising falsely stating that the area's live, work, and play environment, bad advertising. First of all, as a tourist, it would scare me that there are no phone booths for 911 assistance, especially if something happened, such as I left my cell phone at home, I've gotten robbed, or even just a simple accident. This is the main reason I object to housing structures any further than the 26 block project. But of course, that's just my opinion. I'm only one person. Secondly, the adult recreation, something that the majority of this area populates, can apply learning one another, and the neighbors could get to know each other and get along a little better. Something like a skating rink. Let's say the Winn-Dixie on Silver Beach and Broadway in Riviera. It's been abandoned for years. I'm suggesting and soughting assistance because CRA says that it's on the market, but they have nothing to do with the building. I'm finding nothing but disconnected numbers concerning the owner of that building, and not only would the profit would help support the city repairs, but it would also provide a perfect atmosphere for the work, live, and play advertisement. Would also give a chance for the defense authorities and the citizens to get to know each other in a less aggressive environment besides on the street. Before I close this concern and request for support, I am asking about the regards in the townhouses off of Broadway and Riviera. I was just wondering if they were connected to the city water yet. I mean, how safe is that going? Because I don't know them people. That's all. Sincerely, thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you.
Erica Davis.
Good evening, Erica Davis, Riviera Beach, West 37th Street. I just came here tonight. I don't want to bust your bubble on the development and everything, but I came to address the killing that was on my street this morning of the 7-year-old young man. I don't know what you guys are doing about policies and procedures of the landlords, but this is a serious issue. We're here doing all of these events, spending money on events, spending money on all this different stuff for social gatherings or whatever, and we need to really, really address the shootings out here in Riviera Beach. That was an innocent little boy caught up in a situation with his mother and something else, some other person, and they came out and shot him up, and it was very disheartening to me. And that is the third murder on my street since I've been living there, and it's a shooting every day. Now it's not a police issue, it's a landlord issue. We are getting garbage in our city from outside of somewhere else, and the landlords are outside from somewhere else. And they're bringing all these problems into our city. We need to really, really address this. District 1, you need to address it, because it's happening more in your district than anywhere else. And we're tired of it. We can talk about developing cities all day long, but who wants to come out here with all of this crime going on? And you can't walk down the street. My son can't walk down the street. I'm afraid that a bullet's going to fly any time of the day or night. And it's ridiculous. And you can't blame the police officers because they can't be everywhere all the time. So it has to be some kind of policies or something that can be put on the landlords of who they're renting to. Or we need to buy up the properties ourselves in the city so we can control what's going on. But we really need to clean up this city, tear down these apartments, build homes up here for home ownership so we can stop this madness. It will never end without doing that. Plus, we need to invest in cameras on every street. All the problem streets, we need cameras. Now, that could have been probably solved if we would have had cameras on the street. So you guys need to consider these things. I don't care about development right now, anything else. We're talking about lives here that we need to save. So we need to get on that really quickly. And you guys need to get together with Mr. Evans and work this thing out, because it's serious. It's at my front door more than once, and I'm not going to deal with it. Thank you.
Thank you. We'd like to, as a board, I'm sure, and as a city, we'd like to acknowledge the loss of the young man, the child lost last night to gun violence. I had this conversation, implored my board at the last city council meeting that we need to look at these issues of crime in Riviera Beach, and it's going to take the community. It's going to take the police. Of course, it appears the police can't do it by themselves. So we're going to need to have the community involved, residents involved, to be able to look at this issue and not just look at it. We're going to have to do something about it. I have implored to the city manager, to the police chief, because I've had shootings on my street, behind me, where I've had to actually get on the ground in my backyard. So yes, it is a serious issue here. And those are the things that we as a board and as a city have to address, and it has to be more than just the police involved in addressing these issues. It has to take a community effort. We're going to have to do something, people. This is really, and as the resident said, this has gotten way out of hand. We're happy about the development in the city. We're happy about moving the city forward, but nobody is coming here if there is the continued rash of gun violence that's happening in our city. So I implore all of the citizens and the residents of this city that we come together to be able to address this issue. And I think that Mr. Evans can concur with my statement. There was a statement made by the police chief today. Mr. Evans, you want to bring us up to date?
Yes, Madam Chair. We've had multiple conversations with multiple council persons with regards to the rash of gun violence and violent activities that have occurred in our community. And we are looking at every opportunity to try to attempt to solve and cure some of the issues. I have authorized the police chief to go forward with the acquisition of additional cameras. We're looking at the expansion of ShotSpotter. We've increased our staffing model. We're going to be bringing forward a program that is spearheaded by Councilperson Lanier, adding the Hope Dealers. We're looking to expand some of our recreational programming to even look at innovative and creative ways when kids are out of school, maybe looking to have some of our recreation facilities open 24 hours to provide a safe place for kids to recreate and give them options and opportunities. But one of the big things that we're going to be doing is there will be information that will be distributed from law enforcement with regards to persons of interest, BOLOs, be on the lookout for, really engaging the community in your traditional and non-traditional forms to get community input and feedback. This particular situation with a young person that's 7 years old is devastating on multiple levels, and so we want to assist as much as possible to bring this family justice and closure, but we need the community support to effectively do that. So no option is off the table, and we are looking to bring forward, I believe at the board's next meeting, some policies that speak to nuisance abatement as well as addressing some of those chronic issues in our community, because there is a lot of credit and validity to sometimes some of the landlords in our community are not very proactive while ensuring that folks are renting those units and going through appropriate checks. And we have situations where there are homes that are continuous problems for our community. So we are going to be very aggressive, and if we deem a property as a nuisance property and it is not a homesteaded property, we will exercise all resources under the law to take the property. Because we cannot allow for one property or one group of individuals to perpetuate the fear that is going through our community. So we are going to take a stern approach with regards to that and bring some policy modifications to the board that actually put some teeth into some of the policies that we've had on the books but just doesn't have any enforcement mechanism. So we're looking at this holistically, and there will be information that will be shared with this board as it relates to the Chief of Police's strategic plan. Some information is actually going to be released here probably in the next 24 hours with regards to some statements by the Chief of Police, myself, and the mayor. And we're going to be more proactive in getting information out and informing the community as to what's happening with regards to criminal activity and criminal behavior, and then engaging every person in our community who's interested in helping us turn the tide and move forward in a positive direction.
Thank you. And I just want to reiterate the fact that anybody who is sitting in this audience, anyone who is watching from home, if there's anything that you can do to help us to address this issue as a resident, we are imploring all of our residents to come out and to be able to help us solve this problem, because there's no way that the police can do it by themselves, and there's no way that we can do it by ourselves. So we're asking that all of the residents in this city come together, and it's not just this whole kumbaya type of thing. I want some real action, some real things to happen for this city in terms of crime, because as I said earlier, it's gotten way too far at this point, and the only way that we're going to be able to address this is by having the community, the residents, the police, and everybody else involved in addressing this issue. So you can call my office or any of the commissioner's office to say what you can do to help us to resolve some of these issues. Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
I just want to add, a couple of years ago, we joined in a lawsuit. I believe that our attorney is going to be discussing it with the City Council at next week's meeting, but I wanted to add my thoughts on this. The public may not be aware that if any one of us were to propose gun regulations, we could be, three things could happen. One, we could be personally fined $5,000. Personally fined $5,000. Second, we would be kicked off of council, just dismissed by the governor off of council. And the city itself would be charged a fine of about $100,000. So this lawsuit has gotten to a point now where we just lost in court, and I'm sure that Dawn will talk about it next week, but I want to encourage everybody to take a good, long, hard think about whether or not we want to pursue this. I personally am very much in favor of pursuing it to the Supreme Court, and I hope that my colleagues agree. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move on with our regularly scheduled meeting. We're going to go to our next item. Madam Chair. I'm sorry,
CRA board member appointment to CRA evaluation committees. The acceptance of public comment cards is now closed, and we have no public comment cards on this item.
Thank you. Mr. Jonathan Evans.
Madam Chair and members of the board, if I can have Mr. Andre Lewis present this item. This particular item speaks to appointments that we're seeking from the elected officials to serve on some committees for the purposes of evaluating some of the programs that we have put forth, but this is the actual memorializing those actions that has been discussed by the board in previous meeting.
Good evening, Council. Andre Lewis, Senior Project Manager. So just quickly, we had the Commercial Grant Program Round 4 that was approved, and we appointed Commissioner Lawson to that committee. We just closed the round, and we're going to be scheduling a time that the committee could meet at Mr. Lawson's leisure, whatever is available to you, amenable. But we also need to move forward with appointing 2 other board members to the Art and Branding Committee and our Signage Program Committee. So the process that we took the last time was that we took a vote, and we appointed 1 for each committee, so we would like to move forward with that now.
Madam Chair.
Yes, go
I'd
ahead.
be happy to volunteer to be on the Art and Branding Committee. I think a number of those projects, about how many art projects are in District 4?
We have completed, I believe, 8 in your district,
Okay,
and we have proposed 6 more.
okay. And what are the numbers in other districts?
We have about 7 or 8
For the rest of the city?
that's spread it
Okay.
around the district with the also consideration to the art projects in the marina.
Okay, then I'd be happy to volunteer to be that person.
Thank you.
You're volunteering for the art and branding or from the for the signage?
The art, well, I would do both if I've got plenty of time on my hands.
Okay.
If nobody else wants to do it, I don't mind doing them both.
Any other volunteers? There you have it.
Okay.
This hotel will serve on both
All right.
committees.
Thank you. We'll be in contact.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk?
Item number 9, Marina Village Phase 2 discussion. The acceptance of public comment cards is now closed, and we have no public comment cards for this item.
Thank you. Mr. Evans, I brought this, and board, I brought this item to the CRA board for discussion in regards to where we stand, where we are with this project. At our last conversation about this, there were comments made about moving forward with the financial vetting. We've since had articles in the Palm Beach Post in regards to this project. We've had numerous emails from concerned residents in regards to this particular project. So really what I wanted to do this evening was to have the city manager, the CRA director, to bring us up to speed in terms of where we are in terms of financial vetting, in terms of individual organizational vetting for this project as we move forward.
Madam Chair and members of the board, where we stand today is that we are moving forward with discussions with the developer concerning Element 8 and Element 8 exclusively. We have solicitations that are ready to go before the board to secure financial services as well as legal services to facilitate the arrangement, whether it's with this particular developer or subsequent development projects. Once those solicitations are approved by the board and we memorialize the relationship in a contract, that particular firm will be responsible for looking at the financial components of the deal that was part of the solicitation that was provided by the joint development team, and to look at its merits to bring that project to fruition. Also, legal services will be secured for the purposes of structuring a deal that ultimately leads to little to no risk on behalf of the CRA and city. So there is still a lot of work that is left to be done. There is subsequent conversations that will occur with this board, and so by no stretch of the imagination is it a conceivably wrapped up in a bow and it's all completed. There is still some independent analysis and some additional legal discussions that will occur as a result of the agreement. So I did want to state that also. Madam Chair, we know that we've gotten information with regards to the news articles, and we're cognizant of that, and Mr. Scott Evans can provide some additional context with regards to what staff knew at the particular onset of the proposal. But nonetheless, we are going to press on our financial consultants to look at the structure of the deal. Do they have the ability and wherewithal to be able to deliver the project, and to make sure that we mitigate any risk to the CRA and city? So we're looking at it at the merits of their proposal and based on their proposal. The other side of it is when we do have any solicitations, such as something similar to the ITN or the solicitations for business arrangements that we have, we make sure that we shore up in a contract to protect the city on all conceivable fronts. But it's not something that we get into doing Google searches or media searches or anything as a result of that. If that is something that the board wants to have explored, that's something that we can certainly facilitate. But I did want to let the public as well as the board know that we are still moving forward as directed on element 8. And as discussed originally, the elements are going to be negotiated and discussed element by element. It is not an entire agreement that we're looking to bring forward to the board for consideration once we get to that point. But there is still multiple conversations and discussions that have to happen in a public setting and get the direction from the board as to how you wish to proceed.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or discussion about this item? As I said before, I wanted this item to come before the board based on all of the information that has been presented to all of these board members through published post articles, through other articles from other municipalities in regards to this. Now, of course, all the board members here know my position on this project. There has always been a 4-1 vote on this project. I am totally against it, but I'm only one vote. But I wanted to make sure that the public was aware of exactly the process that we're in with this particular project, what we're going to do to make sure that the city is protected, and what we're going to do to make sure that everything is done in order if we are to move forward with this project. If there are no other questions, we're going to move forward to item number 10.
A resolution of the Board of Commissioners of the Riviera Beach Community Redevelopment Agency amending the interlocal agreement between the agency and Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council to modify the scope of services, to extend the term of the agreement, and to increase the compensation for the agreement by $97,000, directing and authorizing the chairman and executive director to take such actions as shall be necessary and consistent to carry out the intent and desire of the agency, providing an effective date. The acceptance of public comment cards is now closed, and we have no public comment cards on this item.
So moved.
Second.
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This amendment will bring forward work that will be an update and continue on work to the current CRA plan update that's currently under development by Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council. We're proposing that they review the existing land development regulations for the downtown areas of the CRA and prepare recommended revisions to those zoning regulations, including changes to the zoning map, comprehensive plan, and as a component for this work, prepare a redevelopment incentive program for the CRA, which will include recommended revisions to the Land Development Code, and to provide and study increasing density and height to enhance the redevelopment potential of our redevelopment area. This work also includes providing for the board's consideration potential incentives to developers who bring large-scale redevelopment projects to the city to help promote and provide jobs, economic development, and increase the city's tax base. The project will be closely coordinated with the city's Development Services Department and will include multiple opportunities for public input at workshops to incorporate critical resident and business owner and property owner feedback. And once the draft proposals are ready, then there will be additional public input hearings before the CRA Board, Planning and Zoning Board, and City Council. The amended scope of services also includes an allowance for a task for additional housing analysis as needed, and the CRA anticipates that these studies will be needed to participate in future grant applications for Phase 2 of the Marina Village project. The work will include input from the real estate market analysis, which was completed as a component of the original interlocal agreement that was developed to support the CRA plan update. The Planning Council will present these to the CRA Board, Planning and Zoning Board, and City Council as they move through the various development approval stages, or rather for the new changes to the land use zoning. And the public workshop component of the current CRA plan update has been delayed due to COVID. And so these workshops will now be coordinated with the new additional work so that at the same time we can not only update the CRA plan, but bring forward the changes to the Land Development Code so that we can increase the development potential for Broadway Blue Heron Avenue E and all of the downtown areas of the CRA. The existing interlocal with Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council includes preparation of future capital project recommendations for water quality improvement, and they've also already completed the real estate market analysis. And as I mentioned earlier, under the comments on the invoices, the signage program was recently approved by the CRA board on February 24th, 2021. The real estate market analysis and a progress on this pending work of the CRA plan update and the additional work, if approved tonight, would be presented to the City Council as a component of the upcoming visioning workshops, which I believe we're still searching for a date for. The updated schedules for the interlocal are attached to the proposed revised agreement. The CRA, the Development Services Department, and the Planning Council will pursue an aggressive schedule to complete the draft documents in the next 6 to 8 months and complete final approvals in early 2022. Mr. Dana Little from Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council are here, and Dana can summarize the work that the Planning Council will complete and perhaps touch on some of this work that and share with you that they've already been doing for other communities.
Good evening, Dana Little from Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council. Thank you, Scott. I think Scott encapsulated the work effort that's been underway. When we entered into our interlocal agreement back in August of 2019, there were 4 components to that interlocal agreement. The signage project, which is complete, the water quality project, which I believe is complete, and then the 2 other pieces, which are the umbrella CRA plan update, which we got about as far as we could into the summer of 2020, but we got stuck with the public workshop that Scott mentioned. But in fact, what's happened since then, there's been a request, I believe, by this board or by the City Commission to consider resident redevelopment incentive type of program, sort of look at what other cities have done to try to incentivize and bring forth redevelopment projects with some degree of urgency without actually giving away development rights. So that's something that we'll be analyzing with your growth management team. As well as when we had a meeting before we finalized this revision to the agreement, we were only bringing 2 parts to you, which was the redevelopment incentive program as well as this housing component. But in a very productive meeting with Mr. Sermons and, forgive me, Mary's last name escapes me, but with the Growth Development Department, they have an interest in actually looking through the entire code for downtown. And so while I've been personally frustrated is too strong of a word, but we're anxious to get done with the CRA plan, the fact that there are these other pieces of work that the city and the CRA are interested in doing, it's actually I think going to be fortuitous that we've stalled that a bit so that we can do an analysis of the code, see what needs to change with the code, and then from that, identify ways or programs to incent redevelopment. Because I think that your new development team has, some ideas about things to change. It's always good to go back and update your codes. Even though Treasure Coast wrote them back in 2008 and 9, times change. So hopefully that's added a bit of context to what Scott has presented, and I'm certainly here and I'm happy to try to answer any questions for you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your presentation. Are there any questions for this item? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Botel?
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson?
Yes.
Commissioner McCoy?
Yes.
Vice Chair Miller Anderson?
Yes.
Chair Lanier?
Yes.
That motion carries.
Thank you. Next item.
Item number 13, a resolution of the Board of Commissioners of the Riviera Beach Community Redevelopment Agency approving the exercise of a 1-year option to extend a contract between the agency and Brightview Landscape Services Incorporated to May 30th, 2022, to maintain the landscaping and irrigation of the Marina Village uplands, Promenade, Bicentennial Park, and other designated areas, providing an effective date. The acceptance of public comment cards is now closed, and we have no public comment cards for this item.
Mr. Jonathan Evans.
Madam Chair and members of the board, if I can have Mr. Scott Evans present this item.
Can I get a motion to accept this agenda item?
So moved.
Second.
Very good, Mr. Evans.
Thank you,
Scott
Madam
Evans.
Chair. This item will exercise the one-year option on the current contract that we have for maintenance of the Marina Village property, and that's with Brightview Landscaping. And we anticipate, we've been in discussions with the city's Parks and Rec Department, and this will extend the current contract with Brightview from May of this year until May of 2022. But that contract has a provision in it that if any time we would like to cancel that contract, we just have to provide them 60 days notice. So this will extend it for 1 year in accordance with the original agreement that was approved by the CRA board. And additionally, we anticipate bringing back to the City Council and the CRA board for discussion during the budget process to see if the board would like the Parks and Rec Department to potentially take over management and maintenance of the landscaping at Marina Village. But extension of this contract would allow us the time to not only understand the City Council CRA board's position on that, but then if you did elect to direct us to have Parks and Rec begin maintenance of the Marina Village, then that would allow them, through the budget process, then that would allow them enough time to acquire any additional staff or equipment that are needed. And once they were ready and in place to begin maintenance of it, then we would give Brightview notice, and then the Parks and Rec Department could potentially take over. So extension of this just provides us with landscaping services at Marina Village. Brightview has done a very good job, and also we will have the option, if we elect to have Parks and Rec take over sometime in the future, to provide them 60 days notice.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Scott Evans?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Yes, you recognize.
So this particular landscaping company is not the one that maintains the other properties that we have throughout the CRA, or is it?
No, they are only exclusively for Marina Village and the Spanish courts.
Okay, so it's a different person that has the others?
Yes, that's Chris Wayne and Associates maintains other CRA properties and 13th Street.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, Commissioner McCoy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Scott Evans, so the termination for Brightview would be for Parks and Rec to take on Bicentennial Park? Is that what I heard you say?
Yes, if we terminated Brightview sometime in the future, it would be so that they would take over all of the maintenance that's currently going on in Marina Village and at the Spanish Court site.
So Parks and Rec is going to take over Spanish Courts?
What we propose to discuss with the CRA Board and City Council through the budget process would be if you wanted to continue with a private contractor to manage Marina Village, or if you wanted the city departments to take over that in the future.
Okay, so that is going to be discussed during the budget time?
Yes, sir.
How long has Brightview, or better yet, how long has the CRA been responsible for maintaining Bicentennial Park? Was this since the completion of, I guess, when the property was CO'd?
Yes, since 2015 when we completed this building and the Marina Upland.
So, Mr. Jonathan Evans, this was my concern that I brought up last year, that we had the CRA essentially covering expenses for city-owned property, but we were rushed to accelerate a loan debt when clearly the CRA had been paying and still is paying for property that's very much owned by the city. And there was no consideration for those. And, you know, it seems like this is happening both on the CRA side as well as the utility special district side, that the city, through its administration, gets to decide arbitrarily, you know, what we want another agency to pay for us. So we use this agency as a slush fund to cover certain expenses that are in fact that belongs to the city, because Bicentennial Park is essentially a city property. Spanish Course isn't. So that's why I'm trying to find out exactly, you know, we get so tied down in the weeds about the delegation of the different 3 organizations, but ultimately, I think it was $600,000 that we celebrated. If we're talking 75,000 or even on the modest end of 70,000 for 5 years, we're talking $350,000 that the CRA has now provided services that are solely built around, well, and I'm going to be a little bit more, I guess I should be a little bit considerate, because the 75 probably includes the whole Marina Village, but maintaining the whole Bicentennial Park for 5 years did come at a cost for the CRA. And I don't understand, nor do I appreciate that we can sit here and just not even remember or consider that that was an expense that should have been done by the city. And never was an interlocal agreement that I've seen or even asked about that even compensated that. So, Mr. Evans, can you respond to that?
Yes, Madam Chair, the monies in which the city has started to receive from the CRA is predicated on a $10 million loan that the city provided to effectuate the development on the Ocean Walk. So that's separate and apart. This particular item and any contract that is put in place requires legislative action. So it was contemplated that one board previous to this has had the discussion and made the decision to effectively move forward with such an agreement. We want to have the conversation with the board as part of the budget process and to conceivably see what is the option to look to transition those responsibilities and duties. And if the city can in fact do it cheaper, faster, better, then, you know, those would be costs that we would absorb related to those particular type of activities. And so we're going to have the conversation with the board, but this is not something that administratively was ever approved by. This was an item that comes before an elected body, and probably those that preceded you, that made a determination as it relates to this agreement and this contract. We're asking to continue the agreement for the purposes of subsequent discussions and get policy direction as to how the board wants to move forward. But it's not something that staff just decided, hey, we need to move forward in this direction and structure the contract accordingly. This was all ultimately approved by the legislative body as a policy decision. And so we're looking to have that more robust conversation as to what are situations and circumstances where the city should assume the responsibilities or the CRA should assume the responsibilities.
Follow up.
Yes, go
Mr.
ahead.
Evans, I asked, there was never anything memorializing that this was the CRA's responsibility to maintain Bicentennial Park. This has always been owned, and even before redevelopment, been maintained by the city of Riviera Beach. But in the fashion that the CRA runs and operates the Marina Event Center, naturally they had to cover the cost. My question is going to be very simple. Can we make a concession for the amount of money that Brightview has charged the CRA over the last 5 years for what would have been the responsibility for the city of Riviera Beach?
To give credit for the $350,000 associated with the upkeep of the park, is that the question?
Yes.
We would have to discuss that as part of the budget conversations. I can't speak to specificities on that until we do a little bit more research on how the arrangement even got to this particular point.
Thank you. That's what I would certainly like, because I didn't see, and I asked about this before, any indication that there was an interlocal agreement or something that provided the CRA the responsibility other than them having to do it because it wasn't no longer being done by Parks and Rec.
Is that it, Mr. McCoy?
Yes.
I somewhat agree, but not wholeheartedly, because currently the city is paying for the CRA director as we speak.
Well, we're talking about 5 years.
No, I understand. I'm just saying that, you know, you're complaining about what the CRA is paying for and the city could be paying for. The city is paying for financial services, developmental services, code. So I understand where you're coming from with that, but you know, you have to give allowances as well at what the city is actually paying for right now for the CRA. But I understand where you're coming from with that, though.
Well, bring that back in the analysis, because I don't know what you're saying that the city's paying for the CRA, Mr. Evans. I mean, because I'm not sure how that's even, I guess, even relevant.
But we can have Mr. Evans to bring that back to us, so you can get some more clarity, Commissioner McCoy, about how this all lays out, because I think what you're asking, Mr. Evans, Scott Evans, is that you want to make sure that as we move forward with this particular vendor, that we also look at what the city can do or the CRA can do to either do that work itself or continue to parcel it out. I understand. Mr. Evans?
We can certainly bring that, and that was our intention, to have a more robust conversation about not just the landscaping, but you know, the inner workings of the booking of events and programs and activities, and how we handle that here at the current location, and what's the optimal way to be able to provide service. So, you know, that was on our radar, and that was one of the conversations that we had slated for our budget talks.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Scott Evans. Madam Clerk.
Commissioner Botel?
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson?
Yes.
Commissioner McCoy?
Yes.
Vice Chair Miller Anderson?
Yes.
Chair Lanier?
Yes.
That motion carries.
We are at the end of our agenda. Do we have any report from the Executive Director?
No, Madam Chair, none this evening.
Thank you. Any report from our General Counsel?
No, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We will start with Mr. Rotel for discussion of the board.
I just wanted to offer my condolences to the family of the child who was killed and the mother who has apparently been hospitalized. I again want to emphasize the fact that I truly believe that we need to continue to engage in the lawsuit in which we are involved with the other municipalities, and if more and more municipalities in Florida decide that they want to do something to control guns in their cities, we ought to be able to do that. We ought to be allowed to do that. We shouldn't let Tallahassee decide that for us. So I hope that we can continue to do that, carry that lawsuit forward to the Supreme Court. That's all I have.
Thank you. Commissioner McCoy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Botel, I don't agree with that respectfully, because I don't think all of the cities that's involved in that lawsuit has enough money to fight the powerful National Rifle Association. And quite frankly,
they're getting less powerful.
Many of what we see as far as violence aren't coming from gun owners who are lawfully and legally carrying. You know, the previous person got up and spoke about the gun violence in the city. Quite frankly, when do we stop the violence that's happening in the chamber of the city council? I mean, this is the very person that broke out and started this whole riot that allowed for 7 armed officers to run into the meeting. So I think we need to start at home as well, and I don't support us going to pursue litigation. We should not be doing it, because here's what you do. If you go from West Palm to Mangonia Park, you wouldn't know the difference between the various gun laws, because that essentially means you would not be able to drive into a city if we're going to allow every city to essentially create their own gun laws, and that doesn't help anybody. So I don't support that, and I'm saying this respectfully. I just think, you know, obviously we have to do more on the ground and on the front end, and try to address some of the people that's in our community, and be more active and very aggressive with community policing and patrolling. I think that is what I would support in this matter. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Lawson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, heartfelt condolences go out to the family that lost a 7-year-old today, and just praying for the family. And as a city, we were going to continue to do our best to support and make sure that we can stop some of the things that's happening in our community. Right now, I'm going to just make an announcement for the end of this month. It is Reentry Month and Second Chance Month. So hosting a forum on April 26th. It's a Monday at 7 p.m. It's going to be right here in the Marina. It is going to be a changed mindset. It's a mental health forum to really focus on some of our returning citizens, some of our individuals that have been incarcerated and are returning back to society. So it's a program that's being hosted right here in the Marina, and it will be televised. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Miller-Anderson.
I just wanted to echo my sympathies to the family as well regarding the 7-year-old that was lost this morning. I did have a question about the RFQ. Did we put an RFQ out for attorney? Or what's the status of that right now?
Yes, Madam Chair, we did, pursuant to the direction provided by the board, we did put out the solicitation for legal services for the CRA. That is slated to close May 3rd, and then once that is closed, we will set it up to bring those packets to the board for discussion and shortlisting, and then the interview process.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Oh, Madam Chair, could I have one more question? I'm sorry.
Sure.
Mr. Evans, I was disheartened to see that the items were removed with regard to the demolition. Do we have any timeline on when that will happen?
Yes, we're looking to bring that at your first meeting in May.
Okay.
Thank you. Quality housing, gainful employment, sustainable neighborhoods, more resources to alleviate violence. I think that the CRA and the city, as one, can address these issues. We cannot hope that this is going to go away. We cannot hope that it's going to get better. We have to do something in our own neighborhoods, in our own areas, to be able to combat this violence in our city. And once again, our condolences to the family of this young man. Thank you. With that being said, meeting is adjourned.